Around early 2014, I had been pretty far removed from the gaming media, and even further away removed from news of the Sonic series. And yet, I still vividly remember both the infamous silhouette teaser poster making its rounds online, as well as the general meltdown of Sonic fans when it was revealed. The meltdown wasn't too drastic initially. While there were your typical impossible-to-please Sonic fans reacting to the seemingly misshapen and disfigured Sonic cast, other people seemed a bit more hopeful about the redesigned look of the characters. They also were fairly accepting of the fact that this game was being made by another developer and was said to be taking place in a different universe so as to not mess with the people's headcanon. Actually, if you remove the natural initial shock of anger that always occurs with a Sonic announcement, I think the initial reactions towards the character's redesign was pretty optimistic, all things considered. The characters being a bit lankier and equipped with gear and accessories, and of course Knuckles' jacked physique, piqued the interest of many, cautiously or otherwise. But as is pretty common practice during a mainline Sonic release, the closer we moved towards the release, the more that was revealed, and the worse the general reactions of the fans to every update. By this point, I think I had pretty much given up on Sonic games. Not that I had my heart broken because of a release or anything, but I hadn't played a new Sonic game since Sonic and the Secret Rings had come out, and before that it was Shadow the Hedgehog. During that gap, I saw Sonic Unleashed release with a backlash from the fans due to the Werehog, Sonic and the Black Knight be disliked for being just another storybook game, Colors and Generations providing a glimmer of hope, followed by everyone being angered that Sonic Lost World looked like Mario Galaxy. So needless to say, when everyone was flipping their tables in regards to every update about Sonic Boom, I just saw it as business as usual. Looking back now, 9 years later, it's easy to see how everything fell apart now that so much information has been made public. The game was meant to be on PC, was meant to have a more in-depth battle and upgrade system, was meant to be a major AAA game released alongside a hit animated series, allowing Sonic to become a popular name in every home. Obviously, none of that happened. Although you could argue that Sega has now succeeded at their goal via the Sonic movies, Sonic Frontiers, and Sonic Prime. But Sonic Boom was so bad that it resulted in Sonic Forces being the final straw for many Sonic fans, even though Forces was an average game at worst, in my opinion. Now, I'm not anywhere near an expert on Sonic, especially everything from the past decade and a half, but I've kept up enough to know that Sonic Boom was a spin-off game, and I never considered it as part of the main series. Up until a few weeks ago, I didn't even think I'd include it in my Sonic series retrospective in reverse. But a few things happened that motivated me to decide to try out the game. First, I had watched Sonic Prime on Netflix and enjoyed it so much that I decided to give Sonic Boom a shot. While I didn't enjoy it as much as Prime, I definitely don't understand how so many people think it's top-notch. It's enjoyable if you take it as a light-hearted show featuring some of your favorite Sonic characters. I thought the character designs suit the character tropes that they were going for. And aside from Knuckles being dumb as a doorknob, I thought the personalities were acceptable for what was essentially a children's show. For the record, I've always thought Knuckles was pretty dumb, but the show, and video game for that matter, just take it a step too far. Aside from watching and enjoying the show, I also found myself really enjoying Sonic Frontiers despite seeing a few haters online when it first released. And I enjoyed Sonic Forces way more than I expected I would, considering everyone absolutely trashing on the game for the past 5 years. So I wondered, what if Sonic Boom's hatred was also grossly exaggerated? What if people hating on it, calling it the second death of Sonic, was nothing but typical hyperbole from the fanbase? What if it's not actually more broken than Sonic 06? What if it's not the lowest point of the series so far, and it's really just a new generation of Sonic fans looking for their moment in the spotlight to hate on the current state of the franchise? After playing through Sonic Boom, I can definitively say that, well, I can't answer any of those questions with confidence. What, just because I defended Sonic Forces doesn't mean I'm automatically going to defend Sonic Boom. But I don't think it's nearly as bad as people made it out to be. Before getting into the breakdown of this game, I did want to address some of the factors I've seen spoken about this more than anything else. The first one being the character dialogue while playing. Oddly enough, this was one of the parts of the game I enjoyed the most. I genuinely felt like I was watching Sonic and friends move through the world and communicate as if it was a TV show to some extent. Sure, there were the usual repeated lines that you'd come to expect, and the characters would be too quick to provide a hint towards a solution of the super simple puzzles, which would take away some of the fun of figuring them out. But I thought the character dialogue in this game really made it stand out as a different type of experience. Given the slow nature of the game, it kept me interested in a lot of situations. Another factor I think is worth addressing is the performance issues. I'll admit that I haven't fully played Sonic 06, but I've seen and heard enough about that game being broken to have a decent idea of how bad it performed. Sonic Boom, while definitely needing more time in the oven, was not broken. If anything, it felt like it was slightly incomplete. Mainly when it came to collision detection and hitboxes and thinking that you're not able to stand on the edge of a building or just floating in the air. But while those are jarring issues, they don't really affect the game for the most part. The worst performance aspect of this game was usually the frame drops that would occur during the fast-paced sections. But to be honest, those fast-paced sections were so lame that 60 frames per second wouldn't even remotely save them. My point being, while this game has its technical flaws for one reason or another, it's not a broken game and is playable if you're just trying to go from start to end. Also, I'm just going to come out and say it. This game is not a Sonic game. At least, not what I would consider a Sonic game. But I'll touch up on that later. The story is a pretty simple one and involves Sonic and friends accidentally stumbling upon an ancient tomb while chasing Eggman and releasing a snake robot thing named LYRIC that apparently recognizes Sonic from the events that transpired 1,000 years prior. LYRIC apparently had an old plan to create an army of robots which would allow him to rule the world or something. He'd do this with the use of 8 Chaos Crystals, but was locked up by his fellow Ancients until being released at the start of the game. Sonic and friends are now tasked with setting out to find the Chaos Crystals, but in order to do so have to go back in time, 1,000 years, to retrieve a map, while also leaving LYRIC empty-handed and ready to be imprisoned. Back in the present, LYRIC teams up with Eggman and quickly flexes the strength he has over him during a couple of cutscenes, even turning Metal Sonic against him in a moment that I couldn't help but chuckle at. Sonic Team obviously ends up getting all the crystals by traversing the various locales and ending up facing off and defeating Eggman before making it to LYRIC's lair and facing him and his robot army. With typical plot-driven timing, Eggman provides an assist that allows Sonic Team to work together and give off the finishing blow in tossing away the robot-controlling device LYRIC used to control the technology around him. The game ends with Eggman recovering the device and using it to revive Metal Sonic. Now obviously this was a quick summary, so I left out a few points, but that is basically the gist of the story. Shadow also shows up in a couple places. I didn't really understand why he was shoehorned in. The story gives off a pretty generic vibe for me. It doesn't really make it feel like the stakes are all that high like many other Sonic games do. And it doesn't really feel like it does anything spectacular for this series. In many ways, it feels like a story that would occur during a 1 hour long special for a Sonic Boom show. And I'm guessing that's exactly what they were going for. I'm not going to say I enjoyed it all that much, but I did enjoy it enough, if that makes sense. I did, however, really appreciate the character interactions both within Sonic Team and any time LYRIC and Eggman were involved. I liked the back and forth between Sonic and Knuckles, even though their characters' traits were grossly exaggerated. Actually, between this game, Frontiers, and the Sonic 2 movie, I'm really starting to dig the Sonic and Knuckles relationship as it feels like their little rivalry has been more or less shelved for 20 years. There was even a nice heartwarming bit of dialogue between the two of them at the end of the game that I really appreciated. Speaking of heartwarming, I thought the cutscene here with Sonic and Amy was a great depiction of their characters. Sonic is always in a rush. His mind moves as fast as his legs. A second for him is much longer than how we perceive a second. During this cutscene, you can see how difficult it is for him to just sit tight for Amy's sake, but the effort he makes here is very sweet. And you can see Amy appreciating it because she knows how difficult it is for Sonic to stop for a brief moment when his mind wants to keep moving. Honestly, I'm surprised this game's dialogue and characters are perceived as negatively as they are in almost all the reviews and retrospectives I've seen or read about this game. If anything, I think it was the highlight of the game and really the main reason I enjoyed a lot of the mediocrity. While the game's premise isn't anything to write home about, the character interaction is some of the best I've seen in the series. The gameplay is split up into 3 main styles of play: exploration and puzzle solving, speed-based sections, and combat. There are a couple of moments involving vehicles that suck too, mainly because they didn't really control well enough, but I was able to get through them without too much stress. When it comes to the combat, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that Sonic Frontiers had an amazing in-depth combat system with proper upgrades and growth. But my goodness, does it seem complex and dynamic compared to the simplicity that is the combat of Sonic Boom. Sonic Boom is a button masher at its finest. The players all have varying attacks and attributes, but honestly I found it was always in my best interest to just use Sonic's homing attack over and over again when I was in the middle of a battle. It allowed me to mindlessly defeat all of the robots without putting too much of a thought into the wonky controls. The exploration and puzzle solving was extremely simple as well. You generally didn't have to think much about what to do next, and everything was color-coded so you'd know which character to use if there was something slightly more complex. And if you missed the color that's hinted, one of the characters would tell you which one you should be using. So it was super easy, and so were the speed sections. In a lot of ways, this game can be considered Baby's first Sonic game, except I don't even think you can consider it a Sonic game. It's more like Baby's first action-adventure game. The speed sections, which you usually view as the main selling point of a Sonic game, seeing as how the franchise was literally founded as a speed platformer, have been reduced to just auto-running through a small tunnel like Subway Surfer or other mobile games. But really some of those auto-running mobile games have more depth than what's provided in these sections. The speed sections were easily my least favorite part of the game, as I felt they could have just been replaced with a loading screen. The exploration and combat, while mind-numbing and simple, I enjoyed enough, I guess. The biggest downside was how slow everything was. There were ziplines you could use to travel through a lot of the stages, and I'm not sure why they weren't grind rails like they were in Frontiers. The biggest compliment I could give this game is that in a lot of ways it felt like the little brother version of Sonic Frontiers. It took the exploration, combat, and speed sections and simplified them to the point that my 5-year-old nephew could probably get through this game without asking me for help. There were 2 points in the main hub world that I had thought I was lost because the game didn't give me a yellow arrow indicating which way to go, but when I paused and went to the map, I saw an exclamation mark on the location of my next objective and was quickly able to make my way there. I bring that up because I've seen reviewers talking about getting lost in the hub world, and I think it's because they didn't know you could use the map. To be fair, aside from those 2 points, the game pretty much always points you in the direction you need to go, so it was a little unexpected when all of a sudden I had to figure out where to go by myself. Still, I think it's kind of funny that these reviewers and content creators online can get lost in such a simple and targeted for toddlers video game. There are some of the usual 2D sections you've come to expect in Sonic games, but in this game they're part of the problem-solving sections and exploration rather than speed sections. And I thought they were a good shake-up of regular flow of play, as well as the few moments that would require you to use a specific character to get through a puzzle just to keep you from sticking with only one character throughout the whole game. It's only about a 7-hour adventure, so even playing as 1 hour with different playstyle or character does shake things up quite a bit. I didn't realize it, but there's a whole co-op aspect of it too, where one player uses the gamepad that I would have loved to known before because I might have tried it out. But as it stands, I don't really see myself returning to this game, as I feel like it's more of a one and done type of game, if anything. And I think that speaks more about how bland the gameplay is than anything else I say could. So aside from the frame drops in specific sections, and various other technical hiccups, I thought the general art style and design of this game looked good. The biggest issue I felt, yet again, was that it didn't look like an actual Sonic game. There was a point fairly early on where I was running around the hub world and was contemplating just turning off the game because it felt and looked so boring. But I'm glad I didn't, because as the game progressed, I entered some locations that were way more gorgeous than they had any right being. The ocean area in particular had such a nice atmosphere that I kind of raised an eyebrow when I got there. I think the presentation of this game in general gets better as it moves on. Depending on how you define it, there are about 10 to 15 areas that you can classify as levels. Some of them are just a hub world, others are a river vehicle section, but the main ones are the locations you enter to get yourself one of the Chaos Crystals. They vary in style, and each location has its own little gimmick or unique puzzle to get through, as well as filler combat, exploration, and puzzle solving that gets repetitive. All in all, I like most of the environments provided by this game, even if a few of them felt bland and boring. The issue though is, generally speaking, the music in Sonic games is a highlight, but in this game, it's extremely generic. The rest of the sound design of this game is good, but the music in particular just doesn't really do it for me. It's pretty forgettable, which I think is pretty consistent with many other aspects of this game. I'm going to try and make a quick defense for this game, but I'll be the first one to admit that it falls short in many categories. The thing is, I don't regret playing it, and there were a lot of things I enjoyed about it. The characters and the ways they interacted with one another was a highlight for me, and I think if you're not going to play this game, at minimum, it's worth going online and watching all the cutscenes. It was fun, it's just super easy. And a lot of that fun comes from watching these characters overcome obstacles and save the day together as a team. There aren't many Sonic games where you could legitimately watch all of them teaming up together and just fight a group of bad guys while you're playing, and it's something I really appreciated. It honestly carried the game for me, because if this game wasn't a Sonic game, I probably would not enjoy it all that much. This genre, whatever it is, isn't really that appealing to me. But it didn't feel like a bad game, it just felt like a super easy one for children. If I was a reviewer that was meant to give an honest take on this game and whether or not I'd recommend it for purchase, I'd tell people that if they were looking for a fun and lighthearted story featuring your favorite Sonic character and an easy action-adventure puzzle game you could enjoy with your young ones, then you should definitely give it a go. I think there are some other games in the genre that do the gameplay better, but having the Sonic characters and their personalities in this game make it worth it. However, if a Sonic fan was asking me if they should play this game, I would not recommend it. And I think that's where a lot of the hatred from the fanbase sprouts from. It's just not a Sonic game. If the speed sections were actual stages like in Frontiers, cyberspace levels, then I'd be singing a different tune. Heck, if Sonic was able to move through the game's open areas with a speed and do a proper spin dash, I'd still even consider a Sonic game. In all other Sonic games that have different playstyles or characters or objectives, you could still pinpoint the main part of the game that would make it a Sonic game, even if those portions weren't the majority of the game. But in this game, there is nothing about it that really makes it a Sonic game, aside from all of the Sonic characters being in there. and I guess that's why it's categorized as a spin-off title. It'd be like considering Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games a mainline Sonic game, which it clearly isn't. The context of this game's release, though, I think is what really put people off. Everyone expected a Sonic game, Sonic fans especially, but they didn't get that. They got an average action-adventure game ultimately meant for kids. Another problem is this game was an experiment that came at the wrong time. If it was released a year after Generations, I don't think it would be as universally hated by the fanbase, and as a result I don't think Forces would have been seen as the last straw and the death of the series that many fans make it out to be. Honestly, that's why I'm kind of enjoying playing these games in reverse and in a post-Sonic Frontiers world. It's allowing me to experience these games without all of the negative clouds surrounding the series. Sonic Boom and Sonic Forces got so much more hate than they deserved because of a snowball effect. And that snowball started with the game I'm going to review next. So be sure to like and subscribe to be kept in the loop for my Sonic Lost World video. As always, thanks for watching. Dean, out.